to Edible Education 101 and a very special Dean's Speaker Series tonight, with special thanks to Dean Ann Harrison and her team for their encouragement and support, and for including this special edition of Edible Education into the very prestigious Dean Speaker Series. I am your class host, curator, guide on our learning journey, Will Rosenzweig. I am a 20-year member of the faculty here at UC Berkeley. My expertise and focus is in social entrepreneurship and food systems innovation and impact investing. And Edible Education, for those of you that don't know and are here for the first time, this is a very special, uniquely Berkeley class. It was started over 10 years ago by the legendary Alice Waters, a fantastic graduate of UC Berkeley in 1964, and was also inaugurated by Michael Pollan. I've had the pleasure of hosting the class for the last 5 years. This class really focuses on change making in the food system, how to make the food system a better place, how to make it more climate friendly, healthier, more equitable and just. And we host throughout the semester a range of very talented, inspiring, impressive change makers who all take different approaches to this field. And our pedagogy, if you will, is to focus on systems thinking. We try to develop systems intelligence or food systems intelligence as eaters during the semester. We focus a lot on ethical leadership and entrepreneurial agency. So in other words, how do visions and ideas go into action and to make change and impact in the world? We've had really extraordinary topics this year. Our focus has been about seasons of social justice. And when we were planning the class last summer and last fall, we had no idea how prescient we would be about the relevance of this topic at this moment in time. We started the semester with a focus on how our personal values inform our food choices and how little changes can make big impact in the world. That class was led by Alice. The next class we had, we were joined by Al Gore, who gave us a big picture view of the interactions, interdependencies between food and climate, and the burden that the food system, from industrial agriculture to food waste, to all of these places that we touch every day, how they impact climate change. And we really came to learn that food and climate are inextricably linked, and that as eaters, as consumers, as students and change makers in the world, that we can actually make a big difference to the way things turn out in the years ahead. We also had really inspiring and challenging conversations. I want to thank the students for making space for these conversations. Nikiko Masamoto talked to us about redress and reparations. We had the evidence-based activism of Saru Jayaraman. We talked about native food sovereignty with Professor Elizabeth Hoover and the Cafe Aloni chefs, Vincent and Lewis. We talked about dismantling anti-Black racism with Shakira Simley and Tiffany Rosier and Shelley Dwyer. Liz Carlisle talked about land justice and Ade Briones. Probably one of the highlights of the class was our visit with the legendary Dolores Huerta. We talked about food and climate justice with Eve Turow Paul and Sophie Egan. And now today, and the last couple of weeks, we've been focusing on founders and other entrepreneurs. I'm just looking at a note here. And tonight, we come to our concluding class. We're grateful to have a remarkable human being with us tonight. And without further ado, I just want to get started. Before I do, I want to say a few thank yous. I want to thank Eva Gerfain for her ingenuity and her entrepreneurial initiative in bringing our guests tonight. And a special thank you to Alexis Rosenzweig, too, a long lost relation of mine somewhere who was instrumental in arranging our program for tonight. So without further ado, it is such an honor and pleasure to introduce to you our guest tonight, Questlove, Questlove's Food. Questlove, how are you?
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to see you. We overcame the Zoom problems.
We overcame it.
Let me do my formal intro of you, Questlove.
We have another weird problem on my hands. I became a recent. Well, she's not here right now, so I can make fun of them. I'm a recent unwilling cat dad.
Cat dad.
Yeah, and so of two cats, and the reason why you don't see traditional lighting right now is because my cats are addicted to anything that are cords or wires, so they've chewed through my lamps. So, so right now, all I have left in my house are psychedelic colors. So I don't want you guys thinking that.
We love it. I want to change mine to pink and purple too. How do I do that so we can vibe together? Anyway, for those of you, maybe someone here doesn't know, but Questlove is a polymath creator and innovator. He connects and transcends sectors or definition. He's a renowned drummer, musician, musicologist. He's co-founder of The Roots, musical director of Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show band, DJ to presidents, celebrities, and the rest of us. He's an author, producer, director, his directorial debut coming this summer, social innovator, bridge builder, food systems entrepreneur, and angel investor, and most recently, music director, and I would say almost co-host of last Sunday's Academy Awards. That was very cool to see.
I forgot that. Thank you.
And a man who at this moment appears to be everywhere at once in pink and purple as a new
I'm lampless.
Lampless. So. Thank you, Questlove. And could I ask the students, so Questlove could just, I know he likes sound, so can we hear your voices? Just welcome Questlove tonight. Let him know that you're excited to have him here.
Welcome.
Hello. Thanks. Okay. It's a lot of students here. How you guys doing? Hello. How are you?
You know, this has been such a tough semester for everyone with, you know, with just everything that's happened. And I have to say the students have really hung in there. And, you know, they're really grateful for you to be here tonight. And we really appreciate your generosity. We know you've been so busy. And, you know, we know Questlove loves food. So that's what we want to talk about tonight. And maybe you and I will chat for a little while. And then we've got student questions. The students are working on their final papers right now, and they're thinking a lot about how to articulate their visions for change that they have in the world, and kind of taking stock of the stakeholders that they're dealing with in the food system and defining the pathways that they're going to take. So they're kind of writing a little bit of an entrepreneurial business plan of where they want to focus. And they're also thinking about how they're going to bring their unique gifts and talents to bear, you know, and you have such special gifts and talents. I mean, you joke that you've got 15 jobs, you direct, you DJ, you're writing books, you're making films. How do these disciplines connect, and how do these creative realms sort of bring you into food?
Okay, so you know, I kind of for those that aren't uber familiar with what I actually do, I kind of grew up I was a part of the family business, you know, which is sort of similar to farming. The reason why farmers have like large families, you know, to create their own farm hands. And my father was a singer back in like the late 1950s. So by the time I was born in the 70s, um, I joined the family business because, I was born in a time period in which parents didn't believe in babysitters. Like babysitters became sort of a trusted thing, like in the mid to late 80s. But in the 70s, like you kind of went to work with your parents or they just made you part of the business. And so, being as though my father was an entertainer, and at that time period, he was doing like a lot of nightclubs, whereas you guys would see me do a DJ gig in a nightclub or whatever. Back in the 70s, mostly bands played. So it's sort of like a wedding band thing. But my dad had way more notoriety than a wedding band. So, it started off basically just to, I just did chores so that they could keep their eyes on me. And, I started off as the family GPS when I was 5. I could read maps and write down directions. And then every 2 years, I'd get promoted. So by 7, I was uh, responsible for like wardrobe and packing. Like I would have been the world's best Tetris players. My packing skills had Tetris been out when I was 7. Um, and then when I was 9, I became my dad's like production manager, which is, I think it's kind of weird, or maybe it's unsettling now to think that a 9-year-old could walk into a nightclub in the afternoon and cut light gels and set microphones and do all those things that you see sound people. And I would operate the system. So, my dad would do 5 shows a night up until 1 in the morning, and I would operate the board. And then when I was 12, my dad's drummer got in a motorcycle accident. Uh, my dad had a gig at Radio City Music Hall, and he had no drummer. So he just like looked at me and said, "You know what to do. You're the new band leader." So at the age of 12, I became my dad's band leader. And then um, by the time I graduated high school, I I got accepted to Juilliard. So it was either go to Juilliard, but subsequently I got a record deal that same year. Um, because the roots started in my high school. And then by the time I graduated, we had a record deal. So my dad wasn't too happy with me not doing Juilliard. So I took the record deal. I took the career. Um, and then maybe 20 years into my career, once Jimmy Fallon presented an opportunity for us to kind of not take a break, but to get some normalcy, because you can't, uh, for 20 years of just globe traveling, we'd stay on the road for like 275 days a year. Like that's not good for any domestic situation, for any marriages, for raising kids, keeping a girlfriend, any of those things. Like I couldn't keep a girlfriend for like 6 months. So Fallon offered normalcy, and that was in 2009. So I'll say by that point, I have a theory that, if you love something, you set it free, and if it comes back to you, it's really yours. And for me, um, having been in entertainment as a drummer, as a musician since the age of 5, I kind of wanted to explore other forms of creativity. I have the belief that everything in life has a creative element to it, and you could just make the parallels and sort of switch. So by the time I got to Fallon, and I realized what opportunities were, like like our first week, Martha Stewart was cooking on the show, and it was like I was like, wow, I'm in a place where I could watch Martha Stewart create art. Like I saw it, I didn't see it as food, her making a meal. I saw it as her creating art, and my curiosity just got the best of me. Plus I loved food, so I basically just befriended every chef on the show, and that kind of spiraled me into a curious world of what food can be. And I guess I got involved in it simply because I wanted to change the conversation. Because at that point, um, as a foodie, quote unquote, I think a foodie is just an excuse to to say that I was probably had a very very toxic relationship with food. Um, Magic Johnson, basketball player Magic Johnson, was on our show once, and he was there strictly to promote a restaurant. he was like the owner of the chain Fridays, and I thought that was funny. I was like, wow, you're a renowned, you're Olympic medalist, and you're a Los Angeles Laker. You have many rings, but you're on the show to promote your restaurant like Fridays. That's weird.
Mm.
And what he told me really struck a chord with me, which is that he wanted to open up these chains of restaurants in places where there was no access to salads. And he says, "Do you realize, like in Harlem, you can't get fresh salads within a 20 block radius? Like there's not even a Whole Foods 40 blocks from 125th Street, at least at the time back in 2009." And I realized that. I was like, wow, you're right. Even where I grew up, we had to go far to get fresh vegetables. And so, not to mention at the time, Mayor Bloomberg was, everyone was angry at him at the time because he wanted to put soda tax and was saying that, people drinking these 32, 64 ounces of soda was unhealthy. And, at the time, people start clutching their pearls like, oh, they're trying to take our freedom away. They're trying to take our soda. But he was right. And, at that point, I was morbidly obese. I was like 417 pounds. And I had to make a life change. And so, I decided like if I'm going to be a leader or a food activist, a reluctant food activist, I would have to walk the walk and talk the talk. So that's kind of the roundabout way how I got to where I'm now in the food world and all forms of creativity and directing and writing books and uh, my food
Speaking of
activism. So
books, this really inspired me. I know you've got a new book coming out this fall, but
yeah,
this book, Something to Food About, is so cool. I just have really been getting into it. I love that. I love your kind of way of just talking about how things kind of unfold organically. Like one
mm,
thing leads to another. You talked
right,
about seeing the film Jiro Dreams of Sushi, that
yeah,
wonderful documentary. You talk about going to Japan and finding your way and having an audience with Jiro, and you describe this experience like it's almost like a classical symphony, the way the food is
yeah.
presented. And
He
start to really understand, and then I just wanted to kind of connect another thing because I sense that your art in the creative process is really about making connections
mhm,
between disparate things, like just what you described about seeing people cook and Magic Johnson and things that don't normally go together.
mhm.
And I love that. I love that part of your master class. I just watched the whole thing last week.
Thank you.
You do this really cool toward the end for anybody that wants to watch this. You explain like how you imagine or how you envision the set is going to unfold, and you
Mhm,
go from genre to period, and there's this really cool like graphic that shows how you connect
mhm.
like the tempos and the keys and the feel of different music that comes from completely different places.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted, I love one of the things that we're working on in the class is like, how do we find that creative impulse to go solve problems, in a creative way? And you're doing that now in food by connecting these disparate organizations and product ideas. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think half the time it took me a long time to even accept that that title. Like I'm a creative. I didn't even know that was a proper title. I just thought I was curious about some things, and um, I would just say like I need a break from drumming. Let me go find interest else, things that also interest me. Um, but I think that a lot of time I think people are just under the assumption that there's no time to be creative if you're in fight or flight mode. And for a lot of us, especially, I mean, last year was probably the best litmus test example of there not being a middle ground. Um, in my observation, people were either in fight or flight mode, and if you're in fight or flight mode, um, you're just it's kind of like a band-aid solution. Like your survival comes first, and you're just living hour to hour, day to day, second to second, and a lot of times, a lot of your decisions are made in panic mode. Um, and then on the other side of that, um, is kind of if what I call sort of an open arms approach to accepting what happens and basically just rolling with it and not fighting. Oftentimes, I think human beings are rather content in their comfort zone. Like they find something that works and they stay there. And growing and doing new things is really hard to do. And so, I'll say for myself, um, just yeah, I think like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I realized that everything that we do is under creativity and it's under art. Like again, I feel like food is art. I feel like writing is art. I feel like practically anything that we do in life, there's a creative element to it. Um, Even when I was promoting that book, Something to Food About, I did a few Q and A's and talks at like medical facilities. And at first I thought it was weird. I'm like, wait a minute, there's creativity in the medical world. And they're like, yeah, all the time. Like scientists are trying to figure out, well, we see what happens where, you have to do experiments and whatnot and figure out formulas and, record process and trial and error. And I think for me, the key element to entering the world of creativity is to not see failure as an obstacle or see failure as a four-letter word. I used to be locked in my beliefs that, oh man, I can't do that. So, why even try? Because I'm not the best at it. Like I won't be like this person. You wind up comparing yourself to a person that's like put 90 years of work in their craft. And so um, now I've just reprogrammed my mind to just accept that um, I don't know everything and I'm not the best at everything, but um, it's going to be an interesting, fun process to learn something. And so once you have that
You've been
approach, like
sharing that. You've
I
been
welcome
sharing that,
failure all the
that
time.
learning. You've been sharing. I mean, the book share your own learning journey and your curiosity, your enthusiasm, in really, I think, inspiring ways. So also, it feels like you have recognized that you want to do things with other people. It seems like, in this connecting, the way you're connecting music and
Mhm.
you're DJing and you're composing, but you're also like connecting people. And
Yeah, I think um, isolation is good. I'll say that for the most part. When my girlfriend and I realized, like, okay, this is not just a 3 week break in life. Like, this might be a year and a half. She and I made a decision to uh, sort of crash. A friend of ours had a farm upstate, um, and it was isolating. But I'll say that you really have to know the balance of when to isolate yourself so that you can get inspiration. Because half the time when parents come up to me uh, or fellow students and they ask for advice, and I don't want to be the guy that just gives these mundane sort of cliched answers like, well, do you have any advice? What should I do in my career? Whatever it is that they want to do in life. Um, and I don't want to be the guy that's like, yeah, stick to your dreams and never give up. Yes, of course, stick to your dreams and never give up. But um, one of the most practical um, pearls of wisdom that I can share is I believe personally that boredom boredom is almost like the water that plants need to grow. And um, so I often say that make sure you get bored as possible, because it's really, really tempting and easy whenever you have downtime to instantly stimulate yourself. So yes, I too grab my phone to, look up news or look at my social media, or, start texting people. And, for me, I know that boredom and isolation is where the ideas come in. You have to see yourself sort of as having an antenna, and there's inspiration out there in the universe. And oftentimes it has to be in silence. This is why people meditate. This is why people pray. This is why some of the geniuses of our time are from like really far off places, isolated places, not overcrowded places. Um, so I tell people all the time to welcome boredom. But then on the other hand, I think it's also important to find your tribe. And finding my tribe is basically how we figured out the system. When the Roots first got their record deal, um, people were like, "Oh, you guys are amazing," da 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 da. But we really didn't have, uh, you know, like we really couldn't play any reindeer games. Like there was nobody with us, and we released these critically acclaimed albums in the beginning, and it really wasn't sticking. And then by the fourth time around, we came up with a solution, which is basically like grow your own crops. And what I mean by grow your own crops is we told when we opened up our record budget for our fourth album, Things Fall Apart, which was our most popular album at the time, um, our record label, we told them that we want to do a series of jam sessions. And in order to do so, we need a full-time chef. Of course, they thought we were trying to pull fast one on, okay, why you want this full-time chef? And we told them that, there's no way to get musicians to come to my living room unless you have food, really good food for free. And so I hired the best chef in Philadelphia to entice these people over. And these quote people happen to be, an unknown Jill Scott, an unknown Erica Badu, an unknown Mos Def, an unknown uh, Beanie Siegel, an unknown Bilal, Jasmine Sullivan was like the 11-year-old daughter of a neighbor of ours that begged us, like, I know my brother's daughter, she can sing like an adult, trust me. And Jasmine Sullivan comes over and she's like 11 years old. I'm like, no 11-year-old should be here at midnight singing, after school. But that's pretty much like that entire class of 1997. We collaborated and had jam sessions in my house every Friday night and every Tuesday, 5 hours each. So you figure 10 hours every week. By the fourth year, suddenly um, there were like 14, 15 record deals born out of that. Um, Probably the funniest story, speaking of food, was you know, after a while it started getting tedious to me, because like it's my living room, and every Saturday after a jam session, my house is a mess. So, I wanted it out of my house, and, people putting their cigarettes and spilling beer everywhere and whatnot. It looked like a frat house. And at one point I came home from tour, like at, at some point the jam sessions could go without us. Like the Roots would go on the road and come home, and people are still having jam sessions. And at one point I was like, wait, what's the pizza guy doing on the microphone? Like we're American Idol now. Like we're just having the pizza guy like start spitting bars and singing for like 20 minutes. Like this is now open season at Amir's house. And it's so weird that pizza guy wound up outselling all of us. Like that was Music Soul Child. Um, so practically like 15 acts, platinum acts came from those jam sessions, because, you know, if you find your tribe and collaborate, then ideas just start exploding. And so, it's a balance between isolation, so you can be bored and be silent, but not too isolated that, you become your own judge and jury, and you don't share your ideas. And then it's part collaboration. So I think that works in every medium, not just music.
Mhm. Some of the most successful and smartest investors, venture investors that I know, they
Yeah.
look to artists as the signal finders of what's coming in the future.
Hmm.
So they look at art as being, sort of the leading edge of cultural transformation and adoption. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting to look at your career and your, the purview that you have, the community, your tribe, and how it's, informed you now as an angel investor in some of these really cool food companies, whether it's, food products or
Hmm.
um, eliminating food waste. And I know the students are really eager to hear about, how you're
My
thinking
entry
about
into
that.
that world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so as I told you, us using that chef to entice musicians over so that we could build a musical movement. By the time I got to the Tonight Show, we decided to actually do the opposite. And the opposite was, you know, I guess we were trying to conduct a social experiment. So we would throw these highbrow potluck um, events in my house called, well, we call them food salons. Um, and it's basically a matter of me inviting uh, a small number, maybe 40 to at the most, maybe 60. So 40 to 60 people come to my apartment. And what I do is I invite three well-known chefs. Like right now, chefs, the food world, I feel is the new exciting. That's the new black. That's the new excitement, and especially in you know well, the first decade of the aughts, like around 2010. Um, David Chang was starting to pop um, with Cronuts, Dominique Ansel, April at like all of these chefs were coming up, and so we would invite them to come over to make a dish and sort of collaborate with each other, which you don't you really don't hear about food collaboration in the way that you see songwriters doing that. But I figured like it was a storytelling, and one person has one course and the other person decides, okay, well, I know you're cooking that, so I'll do a chaser that's the opposite of that, and then you do the third act. So it was like they were telling a story of food. And basically what it was is it's all walks of life in here. There's writers, artists, singers, um, journalists, everyday people, and um, the food is what's connecting them together. But then they're also connecting with each other. And usually the payoff for me are the amount of emails that we receive the next day. Like, wow, man, we really had the time of our lives. I connected with da 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 da. We're going to write a book together, or yeah, we're going to do an art project, or we're going to go to Egypt and go digging for it. Like that's the end result of it. And for one of these food salons I did, we happened to read an article about a company that was developing a plant-based meat product, and at the time, I believe, is just three or four of them. Um, and they called it Impossible Burger. And at the time, I thought it was cute. Like I really didn't have a relationship with. Uh, I wasn't thinking in terms of food being an environmental thing or that sort of thing. For the most part, food was just there to entertain me. But I did. That's as far as I saw it going. And I had invited them to make Impossible Burger, and we had these blind taste tests, and I refused to believe that what I ate was all plant based. I'm like, this has to be meat, has to be meat. Um, and I was impressed enough to say, like, wait a minute, if the foods that I eat tasted like this, I would probably, choose a cleaner, healthier food to eat instead of this toxic stuff I'm eating all the time. And it really piqued my curiosity. And um, that was kind of my entry. So I just started angel investing, all these companies. And then, at the end of the day, I think the narrative I'm trying to do is I'm trying to restore or give back um, to future Amirs that didn't have these health options when he was a kid. Like there was no such thing as that. So, um, you know, uh, for me, it just starts with Impossible Foods, and then there's other companies that we've invested in um, as well that sort of under the same umbrella. Appeal is one of them. Um, Magic Spoon, it's a cereal company. Magic Spoon has like practically no sugar in it. Like I've dropped at least my sugar intake. I've dropped like 60%. So um, I still like the taste of regular food, but oftentimes those foods aren't tasty or enticing at all. Um, so again, like these companies I'm invested in, like Right Rice, Appeal, Just, Impossible Burger, Perfect Day. Right Rice is like a plant-based rice and hardly has any carbs in it. So again, I'm just trying to amplify um, these food options because one, of the environment, but also for health reasons, because I'm also in a very dangerous sport, a dangerous lane. Back in my 20s, hip hop was definitely mired in a certain way where you could lose your life at the age of 24, 25, 26, 27. And it's like we get to our 30s and you think like, whew, okay, I'm not going to get shot in the club. I'm good. And then now it's a battle that's even worse. Like the fight for like so many people in my field are dying of strokes all of a sudden. I mean, just this month alone, uh, we lost like 9 figures. A lot of them is because we're just not thinking in terms of our health and the health of the planet. And it's going to be entertainers now dying at 59, but pretty soon it's going to be the Earth. Um, and I feel that will be a pandemic even worse than what we're going through now if it gets there. So um, I have to do my part in it. I'm sorry for these seriously long, drawn out answers, but
No, I really appreciate that.
I'm a jazz musician. I'm riffing, as they say. So
It's wonderful. I can, I just feel how deeply you feel this, and I think it's very, your candor and is inspiring. What I appreciate too is that you don't have it all figured out when you start. You don't have some grand master plan. I mean, one of the things we talk about in entrepreneurship is just really like acting our way into meaning, and that's what I hear you doing. It's just sort of following, making these connections about what has meaning for you, recognizing your own presence and powers and potential now as your life evolves, and then bringing them into the world to taking a responsibility beyond yourself and your tribe, and really just like even reaching out and having an impact. And it's just been um, so awesome to see like how many things you're doing and,
thank you.
and trying to manifest.
Yeah, it's a learning process for me. I again, I said at the top that I kind of I'm trying not to play the imposter syndrome role. But I definitely feel more like a student than an expert, and I'm still learning every day, and I'm constantly learning and trying to figure out um, what the path is and where the path is. So um,
It's really harmonious with, we try to bring, we're kind of an unusual business school at Berkeley, and we operate on core values or defining principles that we think about that are a little bit different. They're not, necessarily focused on ego or profit. They're really, the ones you just mentioned are students always. We really try to practice like we're always learning.
Mhm.
Then, another that resonates with what you're saying tonight is this kind of having a certain confidence without an attitude about it. It's really humility. I always think that humility is a form of energy, and I feel that from you in a very sincere way. There's a
Thank you.
lot of hype in different industries. Certainly, there's a lot of hype in the business world and the food world right now. But I think coming from a place of being a student, always being confident but without attitude, being, a little bit, being open, being curious, also being skeptical. I mean, we live in a world where we can't really believe everything that we read on the internet. I mean, this like news last night.
Yeah, the truth is optional nowadays, which
Yeah,
is crazy to me.
the last night's red meat conspiracy like had my head.
Yeah, hamburgers. Oh God, I can't
Yeah,
believe that.
I mean, for those of you that didn't catch that, but last night some very prominent Congress people tweeted misinformation that President Biden's plan was going to
4 pounds of
people from
burger.
eating
That's it.
burgers, and there's nothing in that at all. But it's so interesting, like everything becoming politicized, and I appreciate like approaches that are trying to bring people together. And we had a chance to read about your your partnership with the Food Education Fund and the
Mhm.
Finance and Food High School. That's really cool. um,
Yeah, I went to, all my life, I went to a performing arts high school, and I really had no clue. And that was another thing that really inspired me. Um, were the kids at the Food and Finance High School, simply because, um, I thought it was amazing that there's another form of education and creativity that doesn't have to do with just singing, dancing, acting. Um, Not saying that entertaining doesn't solve problems. Like, it's definitely solved my problems as an entertainer. However, um, there are other areas of creativity that we can go into, that's just as fulfilling as a creative and can solve immediate problems that are needed. And when I visited the Food and Finance High School, I was just mind blown, and almost to the point where like all of my resources and attention totally, uh, went to those kids, even raising money for them during the pandemic, because, of course, a lot of restaurants have shut down. And, for those graduates, it's like they're not going to go to these culinary schools and institutions. They don't know what their next move is. Um, we're actually working right now to bring those kids out to Silicon Valley, um, to visit, Impossible Foods and Perfect Day and Just. Um, they're doing like a 6 week paid entrepreneurship program next summer, and that'll give them access to like Silicon Valley and the food tech space, because every day they're thinking of new ways and new innovations. Like it's and from everything from cooking to baking to crafting to flatware to new ways to cook to building better water systems to urban farming, like everything.
well,
um,
let's be sure to bring them to Berkeley too, and we'll have Alice meet with them and some of the things that are going on campus.
oh, I'm sure they would love to do that. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
let's do that. It would be great to reciprocate that way.
Absolutely.
We have so many smart students in this class, and you are such a cool interviewer. You're a really good interviewer, as I've seen from your own podcasts and books. And so I wanted to make sure that you had time to interact with the students, and they've got some questions for you. And in the time we have remaining, I'm just going to ask Eva to come on here and join us, or I'll go away, and Eva, you can kind of orchestrate the questions with Amir. I'll turn it over you to Eva.
Awesome,
Cool.
thank you. Yeah, so we have some questions from our undergrad and graduate students for you. And the first, it was great to hear more about kind of your path to learning about and subsequently investing in Impossible and other companies. So a few questions around that based on your investments in Impossible, Perfect Day, Appeal, and others. How do you think we can influence people who may be skeptical about the use of technology in food to embrace these more resource efficient new products?
It's really weird. I didn't realize how, my head must have been in the sand, when I realized like how skeptical of science, um, some people are, at least in watching the events of the last 3 to 6, really of the last year. Um, and I just kind of took it for granted that some things are just Captain Obvious, but um, again, we're living in a very dangerous age of where alternative facts. You don't know if you're reading the Onion or the New York Times now, and so for me, at least, um, I think it's important to consider these things because again, my interest in the food space kind of came from a more from a health position in the very beginning because I didn't want to eat these foods that would eventually kill me. Um, and then only when I started having these, I had a heart to heart once with Patrick, one of the heads of Impossible Burger, and Pat Brown was telling me that I know that you're using this on your health journey, but you also got to know that I'm personally trying to do this to um, to save the environment. And once he explained his process to me, and I've had many a debate and argument with people like, well, certain soy products and da 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 da. This is healthy for you, unhealthy for you, and da 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 da. Like I've heard everything, um, but at the end of the day, um, what we went through last year, I personally believe was a gift horse, and I don't take that lightly. This is coming from a guy who had to fund. It's not natural to fund 11 funerals and bury 11 friends, not to mention everyone else I knew. But um, a lot of life lessons were learned in the last year, and the one that I definitely know was that um, this particular pandemic that we went through, that's, believe it or not, easily solvable. It's just depending on our willingness to do the work to get rid of it. We do not want to be in a place where Mother Nature starts talking to us. Like we got off easy. We got off easy with a warning with a virus, and yes, to the detriment of the millions of people that died. Um, but trust me, if we don't start taking this seriously and start thinking and utilizing science and really considering the environment and our health, um, we're really going to have problems that won't be easily solvable with wearing a mask. And in a year's time we might go back to normal. The next time around, return to normal could be 10 years, could be 20 years. So um, right now I just want to lead by example because no one wants to be preached to, or oftentimes people are contrarian. They kind of want to do the opposite of what you, even if it's to the detriment of their own health. And we've seen examples of that now. So um, yeah, I think it's time to take it serious. So I'm just using my platform to go there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And this next question from a graduate student, John Chang, sort of follows up on that. And you touched on, you're using your platform, but people also can be hesitant to sort of being preached at. Um, what do you think it'll take for that adoption of plant-based foods to increase? Is it just more conversation? Is it getting different voices involved in the conversation? What do you see as that future?
The way, I gotta say, the way that I gravitated towards it, I will say I was quasi tricked. Again, like when we met with the Impossible guys, the head of Shake Shack did a presentation at the same food salon I did, and we did blind taste tests, and I refused to believe that the burger that I liked the most was the fake burger, the plant burger. Right now, I mean, hopefully by example, maybe others will follow my lead. I mean, there's definitely others in my position that are in this kind of in the same position. I know, like, Serena Williams is doing her part in investing in the right types of foods. Jay-Z, of course, also does his part because he's on his health journey as well. I will say that, right now, what I'm trying to do with Impossible is, as a Philadelphian, cheesesteaks are sort of in our DNA. So I figured the way to really entice people into this space without bashing them over the head or pulling a move that Bloomberg did, which is like, I'm taking your sodas away, that sort of thing, is basically to offer the option. So, for me, that answer was, it started in Philadelphia. We introduced the Impossible Burger at sports events. We cut a deal with the Live Nation people, and we served it at various Live Nation stadiums, and during football games and baseball games and concert events, and kind of just let the people sort of slowly spread the word. I don't think at any point, like by the snap of a finger, then the world's going to change instantly overnight. But my plan is basically just to, and not to make a pun of it, to just plant seeds and see it through, and then certain that the people I influence will influence, and so on and so on and so forth. And that's basically, that's how real revolution is. I think we have this sort of idea that change and revolution has to happen kind of where you have the world's attention. Unlike last year, it was the first time where the entire world was connected with each other. But oftentimes change and revolution starts with one small seed of an idea that slowly spreads. And I'm using the Philadelphia cheesesteak to sort of preach the gospel.
I love it. Plant the
You can
seed.
get it on Gold Belly, by the way. It's not just a local Philly thing now. Gold Belly offers the cheesesteak, and they deliver, and people are satisfied even if it's delivered 4,000 miles away. Amazing.
I was going to say, plant the seeds and make it delicious, because that Philly cheesesteak sounds really good. Definitely going to get my hands on that.
Yeah, taste is important for me. I won't invest in anything if it doesn't taste good. Like, I just want to invest in something just because it's friendly to the environment, or it's the healthy thing. Like, I love food, I love taste, and all those things. So the foods that are being developed now, they're getting way better in their presentations as far as satisfying taste.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, shifting gears a little bit to more of those similarities around music and food that you and Will were talking about a bit. And you shared some insights into some of those parallels, those worlds of creativity and art.
Right.
So we have a follow-up question from Saroja, another grad student, who asked, what do you think are things that those in the food system can learn from musicians?
It's funny because I think that it's the opposite. Like, what can musicians learn from the food system? at the time when I was making my observation, between writers, comedians, chefs, and musicians, um, the demographic or kind of the group that I really kept a close eye on, um, were the chefs, only because, unlike comedy writers, and again, like I'm I don't consider, like, the building I work in is probably, I mean, that's the Berkeley. I won't say the H word or the P word. That's the Berkeley of comedy right now. You know, I call it 30 Rock University. And, you know, I'm very fortunate to sort of play a fly on the wall and watch how writers write, for Saturday Night Live, for Seth's show upstairs, for our show on the sixth floor. Um, and again, like the guests that come on the show, watch them create, watch comedians write and adjust scripts, watch chefs come in and figure out how they make things. Um, you know, I don't know. I always took it. I gravitated towards, the culinary arts, only because I feel like there's a bigger pressure on them to always deliver. I come from a world where mistakes are welcome. Um, if a mistake happens, I can riff and sort of bend it so that it still works for me. Whereas, you know, chefs really don't have that luxury of an oops note or, a mistake. Like you have to knock it out the part every time. And so, um, at the time, the head of 11 Madison, Daniel Hume, I was asking him once, because you know his idol is Miles Davis, jazz musician Miles Davis, and for him, his process of creativity, he has a big giant poster of Miles Davis in his restaurant, and I hope, well, some of you should, you know, 11 Madison is one of the most, awarded, Michelin star restaurants on earth, and, um, I asked him, well, unlike Miles Davis, do you guys get to have jam sessions, or, you know, do you just do you stick to your greatest hits and that's it? And really, just in observing him, I've learned, that's what I said, like musicians can actually learn from chefs. Like, you know, whenever he has a good year and he gets awarded a certain, um, you know, award for his work in the culinary world, the first thing he does is he switches genres, like Miles Davis. Like, okay, well, I did jazz, now I'm gonna do fusion music, and then he starts doing other genres. And I found out that also they have a jam session room, like a secret room on the fourth floor at 11 Madison, where like eight chefs sit there and just try to, uh, kind of outdo each other in figuring out the next season's, menu. And that to me was just the most baffling thing. Like, I wound up using that as my blueprint for how musicians could be, even though he was using the blueprint musician, uh, to create his, kind of his menu. Um, so yeah, I think I think that, my advice is basically, um, save space for yourself to experiment, save space for, um, collaboration, save space for silence so that you can get inspiration. And, when things go awry and when things fall apart and when they fail, embrace it, because you just got a lesson. You now know what not to do, or learn to adjust to it. And so, yeah, that's why I keep my eye on the culinary arts very closely, because I think they lead by great example, and they're exciting right now. They're the new rock stars to me.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. And I love what you said earlier too, that when you enter the world of creativity, not seeing failure as an obstacle. I think that's an amazing lesson for all of
Yeah,
us.
I used to take failure personal. There's a story that I told in my book about my, fourth book, Creative Quest, in which, um, you know, the gig that you always wanted, like my dream gig was to do a DJ gig at the White House for the Obamas, and I got my chance to do it. their very last week in office. And, you know, I had built this up in my mind, like, oh my God, this is going to be the most amazing thing ever. I turned it into a CSI episode. Like I'd have graphs on my wall with yarns, and, you know, I literally worked on this DJ set like a year in advance, and I tested it. I'm one of the people that helped create Hamilton, the play. So the night that we won, had our Tony Award victory party, Lin-Manuel had me, you know, DJ for 6 hours at the after party. So I tested my White House set on them, and it was everything I ever wanted. It was like a religious, I felt like a shaman. It almost felt like a sound bath. Like that's how I crafted it like a meal. I told a story with music, all genres, everything from Benny Goodman to, you know, to Little Baby, like 80 years of American music. And I did it perfectly as a suite. And I did it at the White House, and it was a resounding fail. And you know, and at the end, I might seem dramatic, but I felt like I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And at 4 a.m., soon as my last song was on, I snuck off stage, and like ran on the White House lawn to look for my car, and then you know, Secret Service had to run after me to come get me, and it's like, yeah, the president wants you back. And you know, I got there, and Obama and I had like a really wise one-on-one talk, and he told me, he's like, did you have fun? And I was like, I didn't want to make it about me, so I just lied to him. I was like, yeah, you know, it was great. But you know, people are lying to you when you use your high voice. Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. And he instantly saw through that, and he was like, I get it. Like you had this artistic vision that you wanted to execute, and it didn't work for you, and you had to adjust to it. And he's putting it nicely, saying I adjusted to it. But what I was really doing was like looking on my phone on Spotify, like songs that kids like, you know, and, you know, Chance the Rapper and ASAP Rocky's on stage telling me, okay, play this song next. And I'm like, oh, okay, play that song. Like I became that guy. I became like the worst DJ. I hate, but they had the time of their lives. And I thought it was such a fail because I couldn't bring my artistic vision to them. And, you know, he told me about South Carolina, the Dylan Roof situation. He told me that when Dylan Roof had gone to that church and executed those people, he knew that he was going to have to sing. He knew that he was going to have to speak at that funeral. And so he said that he wrote one of the most like strongest speeches he ever created. And basically within a minute, he knew it wasn't going to work. And he put his all into the speech, and he knew within 2 minutes that it was a fail. And he said he took time out, and he just said, Barry, just start singing Amazing Grace. This is going to work. And he winged it, and it worked. And he was trying to tell me that you saw the same thing. You saw that this certain music wasn't working with a particular part of the audience, and you adjusted and you made it work. And he tried to make me feel better. I still had a nervous breakdown when I went to my hotel room because I thought I failed, you know, the last night of the presidency. But that really taught me a lesson about failure and how to adjust and to learn from it. And so, you know, that's kind of what I want to teach people about. Not seeing failure as a means to destroy your art, but really to grow from it.
Thank you so much. I'll speak for myself, and I think all my classmates that we will all remember that story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And
yeah, thank you guys for listening. Thank you.
And I want to bring Will back to thank you. This was incredible. Really appreciate your time, and I know we've kept you late on the East Coast.
No. I'm up, you know.
We really appreciate, I particularly appreciate your gardening metaphors, and I like the thought that quieting the mind in boredom is really like the seedbed of of creativity.
That is so crucial. You don't even know.
You've inspired us a lot, Questlove, and
Thank
we
you.
are forever in your. We have great gratitude. We do want you to check in with us when you bring your team, your tribe from the high school to California. I can already think of things to do. I want to introduce them to Bryant Terry, who had a lot to do with helping us orchestrate this class, and Nikiko Masamoto, and maybe a visit if they're going to come in the summer to the Masamoto family farm. That would be life-changing. And you should try that too, because those are the world's greatest peaches.
Well, now that the new normal is upon us, and it seems that it's about to happen soon. Yes, we definitely.
When it's available. Well, thank you again for
Absolutely.
joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We're going to let the students take a 10-minute break. We're going to say goodnight to you. And
Thank you guys.
we
Thank
look
you guys for
forward-
listening to my long stories. Thank you.
That's great.